Okay. I'll start screen sharing again, and we will get things started in just a sec. Yeah. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Let me pull the screen share back up. Ooh. Okay. Thank you so much for coming out to our fourth and final workshop of the quarter. I do know that it's pretty far back, so thanks for coming out. Even though it's kind of the end of week 8 and stuff is starting to come along, finals. Oh God. Today is going to be a very useful workshop, even if it's not technical. You guys are going to get some great skills about resumes and internships. I'm Caden Davis. This is my co-lead.
Hello, I'm Jessica. So, okay, I'm gonna take it on from here. So, yes, this workshop will be teaching you how to get all the money. So, make sure to tune in. Okay, so if you haven't already, please sign in here. And right after this workshop, well, not exactly right after, but at 7:30, we'll be having GB reveals. So, if you apply to a GB and you got in, please come to our reveal night. We'll be having a lot of family activities and it will be fun. And also, you go to the next slide. Okay, so Idea Hacks is coming up, which is going to be winter quarter. So what is Idea Hacks? It's basically the largest West Coast hardware focused hackathon. It's going to be held in UCLA and it's going to be held in person this time, finally. So we're going to be holding Idea Hacks in like Ackerman Grand Ballroom. And what is Idea Hacks? It's like a hackathon. You get 36 hours to like build anything you want. We will provide the parts. We will provide you food. We'll provide you like everything. This year's theme is game time. And so definitely come and join us during that weekend. And you don't need to know anything. You don't need to know like any previous experience. So workshops will be there. Actually, me and Katie will probably be holding one workshop before that hackathon. So it's going to be a pre-hackathon workshop and we'll definitely teach you everything about it. So as you need. So these are some of the past projects here. And yeah, so keep continuing.
Yeah, just to very quickly touch on some of that. Besides us giving workshop, there's going to be a lot of other workshops. There's going to be a lot of industry sponsors. If you guys have any interest in obviously kind of everything EECS, but in particular the field of embedded systems, this is all of what you see here, like the top right, that camera system, bottom left, this I believe that's like a soil sensor slash car.
And
Basically,
that's a watering, plant watering system.
okay. Yeah, any
Yeah.
of the systems where you're working both with like code and sensors and breadboards, all of this, it's a really good opportunity to get a little project that you can throw on your resume.
Yes, also tied in. This will be great to have because then you can talk about your past projects and in your interviews. And one of these could be the hackathon ones. Okay, so like an overview of today's workshop, we'll be going through like what's the engineering internship cycle, like what is should be in your resume, what you should leave out, and then do some case studies on good and bad resumes. And next we'll be talking about like, interview questions, how do you approach behavior and technical interviews, what is the STAR method, and finally in the last part, we'll have breakout rooms and we invited a lot of upperclassmen to help you do mock interviews. And me and Kaden will also be looking through your resumes and giving you some feedback. Okay. So first up is applying to jobs. So about applying to internships. So basically the internship cycle is like, the internship cycle yeah, for larger companies like Apple, Intel, like Amazon, those companies usually look for interns like way earlier. So during fall quarter, maybe till winter quarter. For software roles though, a lot of them like stops or like you get offers during fall quarter. However, for like more hardware or like mixed signals orientated roles, the recruiting season is like fall throughout like winter quarter during that season. But however, those are like for bigger companies. If you don't really apply to these two quarters, don't be discouraged as well as like a lot of companies also like open up roles like during spring quarter or like actually throughout the whole year. So be on the lookout, but keep in mind that you should apply like ASAP and also don't be discouraged if you get ghosted or if you get rejected because that happens to us all the time. Next. Okay, so yes, applying to jobs kind of sucks, but we should have a shotgun approach. So basically, you should apply to a bunch of different companies and hope to hear from them. Because like when you apply to the companies, your application or your resume will be looked at for like less than 10 seconds by a company. It kind of sucks. And many of the positions are actually filled by internal referrals. So if you know a friend, actually, if you know a friend that's working in that company, ask them for referrals. So you'll get a higher chance to get an intern. Yeah. Also, sometimes the position just fills up right before or after your interview. So that's just when you get unlucky. But it's okay. You can always apply to other ones. Also, keep in mind that there are a lot of like FANGs, like big companies. They have a lot of competition. And depending on what you want, they might not give you as much value as like maybe smaller or like startup based companies where you can have more responsibility, do more hands-on things. I'm not saying like bigger internship, you don't get hands-on approach, but basically you have more ownership in smaller companies. So maybe that's what you'll be looking for. So keep in mind to like, don't just apply to big ones, also apply to small ones. And I'll hand it over to Kaden to talk to you about what you should put or not put on your resume.
Yeah, okay. Also, I'm noticing we have a couple of new joiners. We just talked very briefly about kind of the internship cycle. Now we're going to get in depth on actually reviewing a resume. Okay, so just to clarify for anyone, a resume is basically now that you have actually applied to companies or found what companies you want to apply for, you open up the application. What do you need to add? It's first and foremost a resume. A resume is basically a statement of who you are, what you can contribute to the company, why you should get picked. Naturally, that one page, therefore, is very important. So you want to make it good. Kind of obviously, you are going to need to include your name, contact info, so that the company can respond to you. Additionally, including a personal website, such as like a LinkedIn or a GitHub page. These can be good if they want to go more in depth on seeing some things that you've done. Also, your education. I'm guessing you all go to UCLA and are all in undergrad. But yeah, here is it's kind of just basic info that you essentially need to have, even if it doesn't say much. Where you can add a little bit extra of a selling point is any particular awards that you've gotten, just that are like of note, and also relevant coursework. We'll talk about it later, but often you'll have a skills section. And even though a skills section is good for showing hands-on things, it's much more applicable to the relevant coursework section to say, hey, I've taken a lot of physics classes and have a good mastery over physics concepts. Additionally, this is a not necessary section, but a recommended section is to include a objective or professional summary. This is basically just 2 or 3 sentences going, hey, here's who I am, here's what I'm looking for. And it's basically just to recap. Usually you'll have this at the top or near the top, which the employer can read before they look over your experiences. For myself, I could go, hey, I'm Caden Davis, a undergraduate electrical engineering student. I'm an active student leader in IEEE, and I am looking for opportunities in signal processing and wireless communications. That's a very rough overview of it, but something like that. Elevator pitch E. As an example here, this is our just the resume that we'll be following through. Jesse Bruin, even though it's a mechanical engineer, perfectly relevant for EECS or any other major that you might be. Yeah, so it's all basic information. It's good to note that they do include their LinkedIn. LinkedIn is nice because on it, you can include things like pictures of your projects, and just more detail than you might be able to fit in a one-page resume. Additionally, here right away, they can see relevant coursework. And in the relevant coursework, often it's, so as you take more advanced and more specific classes, these will typically be more important to include here because of its direct transferability to a job. For example, you've taken a communication systems class, then you're going to go work at a Qualcomm, like a communications company. That is something you would want to list first and foremost on your coursework. And with that, it's important to note you can often tailor this a little bit to the company or the broad industry that you're applying to. Okay, so now is the most important section of your resume, your experiences. And here we mean your professional experiences. Basically for each of these, you're going to list, of course, where you worked, what your job was there, and when you worked there. We have a couple different ways of laying the format out. Most common is a reverse chronological order, which means where you're currently working or most recently worked goes at the top, and then go in reverse order of time so that the oldest place you've worked is at the bottom. In this section, you're basically going to say what you did and what you achieved. And I want to importantly note that what you did can be broken into a couple things. Of course, you have kind of static responsibilities in a job or internship. If you were a math tutor, of course, you tutor people. If you are an EE intern at a company, you might weekly go through inventory. These kind of static responsibilities, they don't, even though they do provide value and are a part of the job, they aren't very meaningful. Projects which you did at work often can say a lot more about you as an employee. Like let's say you were an EE intern, and even though you took inventory, selected parts, you also made this really cool system which saves a bunch of engineering time and improves some statistic. That's a lot more interesting to talk about than your inventory work. Similarly, if you're a math tutor, if you can basically say like, by me doing something differently than others, I was able to achieve XYZ better result. So that's some ways to kind of improve the impact of your experience with the job. Of course, we don't want to be too wordy. A resume, if you look here, they're pretty densely packed. Keeping with this theme, 4 to 6 bullet points is a good range of you to be able to explain the brief overview of your job, maybe a special project or two, while not being kind of monotonous. So Jessie Bruin, she's an undergraduate researcher here. Yeah, so let's go through it a little. She's designed 6 icons and a logo for da-da-da. Important to note is that she says using Photoshop. In these sections, it can be important to call out what techniques or transferable technical skills you've gained or you've used. Like, let's say you are at a research lab and you use a PCB design tool. Mentioning that is really good for companies. They know they don't have to retrain you on that as heavily, and gives them somewhere to kind of immediately see your hard skills. Kind of on a broader perspective, in the second bullet point, she has pitched ideas to achieve some result, and the impact of what she has done has caused 50% more engagement. Being able to put a metric, some kind of quantifier of your success, can be really valuable for showing that like you concretely made a difference at this company and that your work had a tangible role. You weren't just like the intern or the worker who just kind of helps the company flow. You actually improved it. So projects, this is a very similar section to experiences. If you haven't had as many professional experiences, projects are often something that you really want to emphasize. In these, again, you'll want to point out some of the tools, the techniques, things like programming languages. I guess you can see these at the bottom. Yeah, programming languages, PCB design software, lab equipment. These are all good to mention and show how you've used them in a project. Again, to recap, we want to quantify our success, and we want to show the impact or purpose of our project. I've talked about impact, like Jessie Bruin, causing 50% more engagement for her app and making a very big difference to the project. But purpose is also meaningful. You saying, I designed this project just to learn and have fun, of course, is good and definitely shows that you have a good handle on engineering skills. But saying, I've made a project to improve water consumption on farms. By implementing my system, I've found that farmers can save about 40% of their water usage, something like that. It makes it feel that you're not only concrete in your engineering skills, but in your problem solving skills. And it really demonstrates kind of higher level thinking that you'll be able to aid at a company, not just by being like solving the technical stuff or being like, hey, make this, but the design, the upper level, what should be made. The skills section, this kind of goes with before the tools and techniques and abilities that you have. Here, often these include, at least for my resume, which I have here, looking at it, PCB design, programming languages, circuit simulation, lab equipment, CAD. Each of these, and often the softwares or physical instruments that go with them, can be important to mention. Of course, you don't want to spend too much time on this section, but having it be in some kind of small box or small section can be good as a reference for the person interviewing you. Be careful though. Often, if you write a programming language on there, you can expect to be tested on it. So just make sure that you have at least some real experience and at least some level of confidence in your ability to demonstrate your knowledge. Okay, so looking at Jessie Bruin, she is in the Bruin racing team, which is cool. Okay, looking at our first bullet point. She's saying what she's done, machining parts of the car, and she says the technique she's learned, water jet, milling, lathe. These are different machining and manufacturing techniques. In the next point, designed parts of the brake system using SolidWorks. This third point is really interesting. Collaborating with an interdisciplinary team or kind of the overall project. This is a good bullet point demonstrating soft skills. The first two bullet points mention concrete things. Okay, CAD, machining, but this third one shows a level of leadership and communication skills, which we will come back to shortly. Additionally, in her fourth bullet point, she shows the impact of what she's doing quantitatively, saving the club $300. Okay, that's something we can definitely see. Looking at the skills section. Okay, so SolidWorks, MATLAB, Photoshop, Raspberry Pi. These are all really good skills. For a electrical engineering or CS resume, often since we're a little more involved on the software side, you might split it up into like software and programming kind of separately. I would recommend not including Microsoft Office because it's basically a given that you can use like the very basics of Microsoft Word or open a Google Doc or a Excel spreadsheet. The only way to say you're like really proficient in Microsoft Office to be worth including is if you can like write macros in Excel and code in Visual Basic and actually have a mastery there. Okay, so we have gone over a lot of sections to put on a resume, a lot of things to include, and lots of details. But we have a basically opposite constraint. We want to fit all of this on one page. Needless to say, space is going to be very constrained here. So you want to avoid having like really big page margins or a bunch of white space because often that's room that you could use to basically add more about yourself and more details, giving insight into your growth as a engineer. Of course, we do want this to be readable. So you don't want things too cramped. You want all of your text to be readable from, say, sitting on the desk a few feet from you. Usually a font size of like 10, maybe 9, but like 10 or above is pretty solid. And then, of course, this is a professional document. Professional documents do not have typos, so be careful there. Okay, so we've gone over a high-level overview of what the parts to add are. How do we make it good? So the key thing to keep in mind is that a recruiter has their eyes on your resume for 6 seconds. You have to convey who you are, why you should get picked in 6 seconds. We want to have short, bold, very statement bullet points. We'd like to include some keywords that basically immediately give the recruiter recognition of what you're doing or what you're good at. You could talk very in-depth about something, or you could say like machine learning as an example. Even though you might want to include in your bullet points that more in-depth overview, you'll still want to say like at a high level what you did, because your recruiter can see that and immediately go, oh, this person's done machine learning. Again, and I keep emphasizing, quantify achievements. They look at your paper, they see a big number with a percentage sign that says plus 40% efficiency. That's important. That's has weight, like tangible weight in numbers. Also, we can take some advantage of some tips from graphic design by basically guiding the recruiter's eyes to what's important on our page and how they should look at it. You can do this through the use of bolding and different basically like text weights, because your eyes naturally go to whatever is boldest and has the most contrast on your paper. We can use font size because, again, your eyes go to large things, more noticeable things on the paper. So let's say you start off big, experience, and then right under it, you say undergraduate researcher at somewhere. The recruiter is basically going to see that first over anything below it. And yeah, with that, smartly placing things on our resume. Generally, the more important it is, the higher up it should be. Your first bullet points should be your most significant. And I know we talked about the reverse chronological order, but even within that, just you generally want to emphasize through that placement what's actually like relevant to the job. Okay, so that's a lot of words. Let's get to a example of what a strong, basically here it would be the experience section, but let's look at this first one. Okay, so at both of these places, we are an engineering intern doing the same job. Let's look at our first example. Okay, so saying what we did, we optimized the video application, the hardware platform, the Jetson Nano. We've met a latency target, basically saying we've achieved this. And what we've achieved is sub 120 milliseconds. So again, we are quantifying what we've achieved. I will give a moment to read through a little more, actually. Okay, so in our second point, we've investigated electromagnetic susceptibility using this technique here. Our third point, I think this is the most significant. We say that we have generated a lab report saying exactly what our action is, and we say the consequence of that action. Our action has led the electrical engineer to implement a shielding. Finally, we say, okay, we've done this Git documentation and quantified basically how much that is. Meanwhile, to take all of those and reduce them, this second summary is saying all the same things in a much less descriptive way. We did video optimizations for the target hardware platform. There's no specifics, nothing about what you achieved. Optimizations can be as simple as, oh, I got like a few milliseconds off, or in our case, we say we've met this latency target. We've say that we've helped the lead electrical engineer decide this. That's vague. And again, we aren't really giving the full weight to our actions, because in our first one, we say that we have generated the lab report, which directly led to this as a consequence. Well, in the second one, we don't take as much ownership of our contribution. And then finally, we've written documentation or code maintenance. It's again just lacking some of those specifics and those quantitative metrics. Okay, so now that we've gone over an example of how to write these sections well, let's look a bit more at the formats. Engineering resumes, unfortunately, they're pretty boring looking. The humanities majors might be able to put a picture or some kind of fun pizzazz to their resumes. We can't quite do that as heavily with the same success. In general, a highly traditional resume is all you need, but a tiny bit of color or a slightly interesting format can add some interest, but you want to be very careful with this. Here, allow me to change my screen share. All right, so if you can see this example here, Jessica, confirm we can see. Cool. Yeah, this is very simple, very clean. Here on the left, you can very or you can instantly call out what each section is. Everything is laid out well. Nothing wrong with it whatsoever. These are ones with a bit more interest. The use of color is really nice, particularly I'm a fan of this left one, but in that it's still very clean. All the color is muted somewhat. It's not too eye-catching. It just adds a bit more. And then this is, oh, when it loads, okay. This might be a bit too much. Generally, we don't need a picture. The extensive use of icons and symbols, we can probably tone down a bit. And if you notice just on this, you sacrifice a lot of room, which you could be using to say more about yourself. Okay. And to now go through 2 actual examples from EE students. Close that. Okay, let's look at this first one here. So right away, we can see who they are, contact, education. They put a pretty big section towards their coursework. Here we can see they've done a lot of classes. Overall, so far, I mean, nothing wrong. If we keep going. So their projects, these are a bit sparse and lacking in detail. Just saying you programmed and built a parking sensor, they say a bit about what they did, but they don't say what they gained extensively. This second one is more concrete in their design. It's a 32-bit CPU or 32 register CPU. They talk about how they use VHDL to create it. Okay, we get a bigger picture of the actual gain in skill. Again, though, that's fine. I think this experience section, though, is great. First bullet point, built an in-house tester, what they've done, why they did it to automate testing, the technologies they've used, like MATLAB, and they say the impact of it. They've improved measurements on the accuracy and up to 4 times faster testing. Next bullet point, again, built load boxes. Why? Testing the sensors. Cool. They cover it very well of why they did the work and what impact it had. Third one, develop software using this technology. What it actually achieves is automating data analysis, and the impact of basically the positive contribution is saving that engineer time. And they just keep going with hitting us over and over with, hey, my work made a meaningful impact, helped the company, and I did cool things that I got skills from. Here at the bottom, their skills section. Great that they, oh, one moment, lights turn off. Sorry about the issue there. Okay, so here they do a good job at the start, talking about their programming languages. They say MATLAB and MathCAD, and I really like that they include numerical analysis because a programming language is very broad, like saying I know C++, versus I know a lot about how to do XYZ with C++, like graphics or low-level software or real-time embedded systems, or in this case, numerical analysis. It gives a bit of just extra detail and specialization. What I'm less a fan of is them writing self-motivated, because with resumes, something like being self-motivated is something you should show. The adage show don't tell should be extensive here. Rather than just write I'm self-motivated, it should come across through your experiences and projects. Okay, so to pick up the pace a tiny bit, so that you guys can get all the practice time, we're gonna very quickly look at this. Okay, their objective, seeking a summer electrical engineering internship Utilize skills from institution and build experience, hardworking, good team player. Here, it's again the show don't tell. Being a hardworking, good team player, you saying that doesn't hold much weight because most people are going to consider themselves that. Also, it's just overall vague. A recruiter can't take that and meaningfully gain a real picture of you. Also, where I can utilize skills learned from institution and build experience, it's also just somewhat vague at capturing who you are. You really, if you're going to include a professional summary, you want it to be punchy in giving a very brief overview of yourself and what you're looking for in a more concrete way, rather than just, I'm looking to utilize skills. Okay, their education, cool, that's fine. Skills and abilities, also fine. Them highlighting C++, MATLAB as kind of their standouts is a nice touch. This teamwork, hardworking section, same as before. Show don't tell is really much more important. Okay, just to go over these projects really quick. So in Multisim, they've built circuits, they've done comparisons to simulation, and for this type of circuit, they've modified parameters to make a change in the current voltage curve. So this doesn't really say why they did anything. They've changed parameters to make a change in the IV curve. Okay, what parameters did you modify and why? What was the intended change in the IV curve that you were looking for? Really just giving a glimpse into the thought process and the design process of why decisions were made and concretely what you did. Just saying changing parameters doesn't say what you did with weight. I think we will move on there. Okay, before I pass it over, VMOC is a UCLA Career Center tool that we can get for free. Basically, it's using a AI system to actually review your resume for you. And it's not perfect. I still think humans are kind of the way to go, but it's really good at highlighting issues in your formatting, word choice, spelling, and bullet length, kind of the more technical, less content aspects of your resume. Okay, we are going to pass things over to Jessica.
Okay, so hopefully after you submitted using all the tips that Kaden said, and you submitted your application, and hopefully they will email you back and ask for you to like join them in interviews. And so what, you go next page. Okay. Okay, so there are basically two types of interviews you can get from companies. The first one is behavior. Basically, you need to talk about like demonstrate problem-solving skills, leadership, teamwork, and communication skills. And for technical skills, technical interviews, it's like your lead code questions, or they'll give you a scenario of some engineering problem, and you need to walk through the design thinking process to the interviewers. And also you should show your problem solving skills. So for behavior interviews, it kind of goes through your backgrounds and your interests and like your motivation on why you want to join their company and why do you want to look at this job specifically. They might ask you to elaborate more on like your projects or like some team works that you did before. And also a very, very common question is that they will ask you, what are your challenges and what did you do to overcome them? So throughout these, you should be able to explain your thinking well, and you can use the STAR method that I will show you later. Also, they could also, for behavioral interviews, they will also ask you that why would you want to join their company, and does your personality actually fit your company's values and cultures? Yeah, so for the STAR method, basically STAR means situation, task, action, and result. So for example, if we take what is the greatest challenge that you face example, then for situation, you want to be explaining what you were doing, like what was the situation, the background of it. So for example, I would say like, I was in the 48-hour hackathon last summer. And for a task, you will want to say the challenges that you encountered and describe it in detail. So for me, I was living in Taiwan and my teammates were all living in California. So we had a 15-hour time difference. Now for action, you want to explain what you did to overcome that challenge. So for me, I create a spreadsheet so that my teammates can log what they did and did not do and what they want the next person to do later. So after that teammate goes to sleep, the next person wakes up, that person can pick up directly from where the previous person ended. So that's action. And finally, you want to highlight your results. You want to highlight those positive outcomes, those impact that you made through your changes. So for me, we had a very smooth workflow and we utilized every single hour of our 48 hours hackathon. We were able to become more productive and efficient. And in the end, I received the organizer award for being able to coordinate between 2 different time zones. It's also cool to like highlight a little bit of your achievements, and so that the interviewer might ask you questions and you can elaborate about your story more. Okay, so for technical interviews, these are well technical, so you can get some problem solving questions, such as they will like give you a scenario, they will show you a circuit diagram or a circuit schematic, they'll ask you some questions about it. For CS, it's like your lead code questions. There's also for conceptual quizzing, they'll ask you some knowledge about your previous classworks and how to utilize like voltage divider, like circuit analysis concepts, and so on and so forth. And for these type of questions, for conceptual questions, you want to be communicating your thought process through like step by step to the interviewer. You want to make sure that you can explain your thought process like, in a very smooth way. And also don't be afraid to ask your interviewer for more clarification problems if you don't understand what that interviewer and what that problem wants from you. Okay, so now for the fun part, you can go to breakout rooms.
Sorry, I was muted. Okay, so if you guys have noticed, we've had a bunch of upperclassmen or interview experienced people ready to help out with the process. So I am going to stop sharing here and I am going to open up breakout rooms. So everyone feel free to join a breakout room of your choice. Let me open those. Our options are hardware, digital topics, and computer science, and resume reviews. Upperclassmen, you guys hopefully know where you are assigned. If not, let me know. And then try to stick to only a few to each room. We will be swapping out the rooms in about 20 minutes. Okay. Also for the upperclassmen, I'm going to be dropping a list of some sample interview questions momentarily.
And for me and Kaden, we'll be looking through your resumes if you want to look through those.
Yes. Alrighty. Also, before I join the resume review, if any of you guys are looking or are not sure what section to do, we can talk about it for a moment. Ooh.
Hello.